responded to diplomatic outreach efforts from the senior government officials in Asia, Europe, and Middle East, Africa, and the Americas, unquote. Page received no response from the transition team. When Page took a personal trip to Moscow in December 2016, he met again with at least one Russian government official. That interaction and a discussion on the December trip are set forth in Volume 1, Section 4, B6. 4. Dmitry Sims and the Center for the National Interest. Members of the Trump campaign interacted on several occasions with the Center for the National Interest, CNI, principally through its President and Chief Executive Officer, Dmitry Sims. CNI is a think tank with expertise in the connections to the Russian government. Sims was born in the former Soviet Union and immigrated to the United States in the 1970s. In April 2016, candidate Trump delivered his first speech on foreign policy and national security at an event hosted by the National Interest, a publication affiliated with CNI. Then Senator Jeff Sessions and Russian Ambassador Kislyak both attended the event, and as a result it gained some attention in relation to Sessions' confirmation hearings to become Attorney General. Sessions had various other contacts with CNI during the campaign period on foreign policy matters, including Russia. Jared Kushner also had interacted with Sims about Russian issues during the campaign. The investigation did not identify evidence that the campaign passed or received any messages to or from the Russian government through CNI or Sims. A. CNI and Dmitry Sims connect with the Trump campaign. CNI is a Washington-based nonprofit organization that grew out of a center founded by former President Richard Nixon. CNI describes itself, quote, as a voice for strategic realism and U.S. foreign policy, unquote, and publishes a bi-monthly foreign policy magazine, The National Interest. CNI is overseen by a board of directors and an advisory council that is largely honorary and whose members at the relevant time included Sessions, who served as an advisor to candidate Trump on national security and foreign policy issues. Dmitry Sims is president and CEO of CNI and publishes and the publisher and CEO of The National Interest. Sims was born in the former Soviet Union, immigrated to the United States in the early 1970s, and joined CNI's predecessor after working at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Sims personally has many contacts with current and former Russian government officials, as does CNI collectively. As CNI stated when seeking a grant from the Carnegie Corporation in 2015, CNI has, quote, unparalleled access to Russian officials and politicians among Washington think tanks, unquote, in part because CNI has arranged for U.S. delegations to visit Russia and for Russia delegations to visit the United States as part of so-called, quote, track 2, unquote, diplomatic efforts. On March 14, 2016, CNI board member Richard Plepler organized a luncheon for CNI and its honorary chairman, Henry Kissinger, at the Time Warner Building in New York. The idea behind the event was to generate interest in CNI's work and recruit new board members for CNI. Along with Sims, attendees at the event included Jared Kushner, son-in-law of candidate Trump. Kushner told the office that the event came at a time when the Trump campaign was having trouble securing support from experienced foreign policy professionals, and that, as a result, he decided to seek Sims' assistance during the March 14 event. Sims and Kushner spoke again on a March 24, 2016 telephone call, 3 days after Trump had publicly named the team of foreign policy advisors that had been put together on short notice. On March 31, 2016, Sims and Kushner had an in-person one-on-one meeting in Kushner's New York office. During that meeting, Sims told Kushner that the best way to handle foreign policy issues for the Trump campaign would be to organize an advisory group of experts to meet with candidate Trump and develop a foreign policy approach that was consistent with Trump's voice. Sims believed that Kushner was receptive to that suggestion. Sims also had contact with other individuals associated with the Trump campaign regarding the campaign's foreign policy positions. For example, on June 17, 2016, Sims sent J.D. Gordon an email with a, quote, memo to Senator Sessions that we discussed at our recent meeting, unquote, and asked Gordon to both read it and share it with Sessions. The memorandum proposed building a, quote, small and carefully selected group of experts, unquote, to assist Sessions with the campaign operating under the assumption, quote, that Hillary Clinton is very vulnerable on national security and foreign policy issues, unquote. The memorandum outlined key issues from the campaign, including a, quote, new beginning with Russia, unquote. B. National Interest hosts a foreign policy speech at the Mayflower Hotel. During both their March 24 phone call and their March 31 in-person meeting, Sims and Kushner discussed the possibility of CNI hosting a foreign policy speech by candidate Trump. Following those conversations, Sims agreed that he and others associated with CNI would provide behind-the-scenes input on the substance of the foreign policy speech, and that CNI officials would coordinate the logistics of the speech with Sessions and his staff, including Sessions' Chief of Staff Rick Dearborn. In mid-April 2016, Kushner put Sims in contact with senior policy advisor Stephen Miller and forwarded to Sims an outline of the foreign policy speech that Miller had prepared. Sims sent back to the campaign bullet points with ideas for the speech that he had drafted with CNI Executive Director Paul Saunders and board member Richard Burt. Sims received subsequent draft outlines from Miller, and he and Saunders spoke to Miller by phone about substantive changes to the speech. It is not clear, however, whether CNI officials received an actual draft of the speech for comment. While Saunders recalled having received an actual draft, Sims did not, and the emails that CNI produced to the office do not contain such a draft. After board members expressed concern to Sims that CNI's hosting the speech could be perceived as an endorsement of a particular candidate, CNI decided to have its publication, The National Interest, serve as the host and to have the event at the National Press Club. Kushner later requested that the event be moved to the Mayflower Hotel, which was another venue that Sims had mentioned during initial discussions with the campaign, in order to address concerns about security and capacity.